everybody. Finally doing a December reading wrap up, pulling back, reaching into last year, grabbing the final books that I read. And yeah, I'm standing, so slightly different view. You get to see my kind of college dormy feeling decorations. Yeah. I hope to get like actual art with frames and hang it up soon, but for now, just kind of, you know, sticky tack stuff to the wall. Hopefully it's not too ugly. Yeah, anyways, so like I said, I'm just gonna do a really quick December reading wrap up, and I have like 2 videos very concretely planned. I want to do part 2 of my bookshelf tour, and I want to do like my 2022 like full reading wrap up plus thoughts plus like top book recommendations and maybe some like statistics if I want to be a nerd about it, and I do. So yeah, without further ado, into the books that I read. So I honestly feel like I've talked about a few of these in videos, but I did read these all in December, or finish them all in December. So yeah, the next 2 books I actually read in December, but I talked about them in my November reading wrap up for some reason. The first one is The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. I mentioned this previously. What a dick. Like, I wanted that book to be a little more aggressive and a little more like when he's invisible, his hijinks. But I think it was like, I don't know, good to know what the hype of that book is about. It's like a solid, honestly, probably like a 2-star. I don't really like doing the star rating. I feel like there's a lot of ways you can judge a book, and just it's hard to give an overall impression. But if I had to, I'd give 2 stars to The Invisible Man. I can't remember the order. Like, I definitely got the order wrong, because I definitely read In Order to Live, a North Korean girl's journey to freedom by Yeonmi Park. I definitely read that first. And this book, I think, is fabulous. It's so good. It's so beautiful. It's so beautifully written, in my opinion. Like, I could very easily, everything she was saying, I got such a clear mental image of what she was talking about. I feel like I could make this into a movie if I had the resources, skills, talent, everything. But like some of the ways she was describing things, I could literally see like that scene in a movie. And the book is, a lot of it does have to deal with her life in North Korea, but I would say the majority of this book is truly about her experience being trafficked in China, being a victim of human trafficking. And so on one hand, yes, you do get a little bit of the buildup, a little bit of her family experience, but I think the point of this book, if I had to kind of summarize it, is that she's trying to say there's this horrible regime, but also when these women are trying to seek freedom, they are then trafficked. And that is something that like internationally we need to, you know, ensure that these women can like escape and be free and be safe. It's really heartbreaking. I cried so much when reading this book. It was truly, really emotional. And then I was like looking up videos, like looking up interviews with her afterwards, because like I said, I know that currently she's a little bit of a spicy figure. Like, she's kind of a right-wing pundit now, and I don't love that for her. Especially because like I understand it, right? Like but I do think, I don't know, it's like the term reactionary. Like, she had this really bad experience, and now she's coming and blaming a lot of like a lot of things to do with more progressive liberal politics that I don't think are the same thing. Like, I don't think living in a world where if you say something bad about the Kim family is the same thing as being canceled on Twitter. Like, no one's executing you for getting someone's pronouns wrong. And also, I think there's a difference between saying culturally we're going to ostracize you for not being respectful of someone's identity. Like, that's one thing, as opposed to like there is a correct opinion. Like, just because I think you're an asshole because you don't respect people doesn't mean that I'm like attacking, like, you know what I mean? Like, those are 2 different animals. And I don't really agree. Like, yeah, I think that there's an element of cancel culture, which is like not fruitful to productive society. But at the same time, I don't think you can compare that to like violent authoritarian regimes that murder people for like watching a movie. Not the same thing. Not the same thing. But what I do really dislike, I was watching a video and basically it's this person saying that because her story is inconsistent, she is feeding into the North Korean propagandists who say that she's an unreliable person and that she's a liar. Here's the thing though. Here's the thing. Don't be trusting North Korea. Like, North Korea is not a source of information that you should be relying on. If they call someone a liar, you shouldn't care because it's North Korea. Like, maybe don't trust them. And I also think that this is a girl who is recounting her childhood. She's recounting the time when she was a 13-year-old girl getting raped. I don't think that we should be expecting her to get every single little detail of her life right. Like, I don't know why people are so aggressive when someone gets like a date wrong or they like misremember certain details of their life when like I can't remember my life like that. Like, if I was to try and tell a story of my life, I wouldn't. Nothing interesting's happened. But if I had to, I don't think I could have like a perfect story that every single person in my life could be like, oh yeah, that happened in that way, because I don't remember it. Like, I don't remember my life like that. And also, like, again, not only was she very young, but it was a very deeply traumatic experience. And I also respect the fact that maybe there's certain parts of her life she doesn't want to be honest about. Like, I think that's okay for her to not want to just tell about every awful thing that happened, every awful thing she might have had to do. You know, I think it's weird. It's just like it's just weird. It's weird behavior. I don't like it. Like, I think like I said, the main premise of the book to me is North Korea is not a great place to live. People there are struggling under not only an oppressive, paranoid regime, but one that is not able to provide its citizens with the things they need to literally survive, such as food, basic medical care, basic housing, you know, anything. The tiniest slip up can cause you to be destitute. And then on top of that, when these people, mainly women, when they escape, and men too, like men are often put into like forced labor situations, whereas women are put into the like, they're either sold as brides or they're like put into actual like human trafficking, like sex slavery situations. Like, I think what she's trying to say is people, even when they escape, they are put into really horrible, gruesome situations, and then they are left in immense risk because they can starve and die in North Korea. If they flee to China, they are living terrible lives and they can't even turn to the authorities, because if the authorities find them, they're going to send them back to North Korea where they will be punished and violently punished. So, like, to me, none of that, all of that sounds likely. I have a feeling all of that's true. Like, and if that is the point of the book that we should be trying to focus on, I don't think potential inconsistencies in her story mean that we should have less sympathy for that situation and less of a push to like, how do we stop that from happening? You know, like, that's the big point of the book. And just because a woman remembering her life as a 13-year-old isn't accurate to the T, not the main premise. I don't know. I started watching that video and I'll admit I didn't finish it because I just thought there was like, if your first point is the North Korean regime is able to poke holes in your, like, they're liars who lie all of the time. Why do we, I'm getting heated. So I'm gonna move on. But anyway, that's In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park. Again, she's not great politically now, but I still think it's a really worthwhile book to read. And moving on, I'm gonna talk about Dopesick. Dealers, sorry, I wrote this down and I like can't read what I wrote. Dealers, Doctors, and the Drug Company That Addicted America by Beth Macy. Originally, I think I had a much higher opinion of this book. Oh my God. A much higher opinion of this book than I think I do in recounting it over in my head. Like, originally I would say, oh, like amazing book. But now I'm like, you know what? I don't think it's a 5-star to me. Again, if stars are how you like to rate. Like, I think I would recommend this to people who already know quite a bit about the opioid crisis in America, not to someone who like wants a good look into it. The book primarily deals with Appalachia, and I'm vaguely from that region, and I still don't know if it's Appalachia or Appalachia. My friend tells me it's Appalachia because Appalachia, if you say Appalachia, they'll throw an apple at you. So I'm gonna say Appalachia, but that could be wrong. I'm really trusting her on this. Like, I lived in that area. I mean, they talk about Abington, and I spent like a year of my life living in Abington. I was really young, but like, I was in Abington. I do remember the area a little bit, and like, part of the story kind of takes place there because a big court case was there. And so yeah, I'm saying that to suggest that whilst I never really had exposure to the opioid epidemic in that way, it was like just by chance, you know, like if we had stayed there, if X happened, if Y happened, I don't know. I don't really know the point I'm trying to make with that, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that like, this is the opioid epidemic, while a lot of America is struggling with it, it does have these enclaves where it really kind of came in quickly, and these communities were the canaries in the coal mine. What I liked about the book is I think it did a lot to provide a human story. It did a lot to talk about the people in these communities who were active. And because these were sort of small communities, there were these figures that you could actually point to and talk about. And I like that. I do think that the human element of the story is often fascinating, and I like that a lot of it is like stories from doctors, some stories from people who themselves were addicted, but a lot of stories of family members who had to bury their young. I think that like those are all good stories to tell. And I also think, I saw a review and I just kind of disagree with this review. So if you see this review, take it with a grain of salt. Take mine with a grain of salt too. Maybe this person's right and I'm wrong. But like, the person was saying that, oh, potentially these parents are trying to make their children seem like angels after the fact, when in fact their kids were like drug addicts, and that's fine. It's okay to be addicted to drugs, but like, you're not an angel necessarily. I feel like the book did a good job of painting everyone as like involved, like you're addicted, right? Like, I don't think the book painted these people as like angels. I think it painted them as humans who had parents who loved them and missed them. And I think that a lot of the story is too talking about like, these are people who you would not typically consider, you know, getting addicted. And I think the reason why that's important to focus on is because like, if you paint like addiction as a personality problem, then there's people who our society doesn't think that will happen to, and the star all-American child is not who we expect that to happen to. So by showing examples of when that did happen, I think it like undermines that, especially for the communities where Beth Macy is likely from, where people might be like, oh, that's that place's problem. My little Timmy is the you know, he's the captain of the football team and he's dating the cheerleader. He'd never get addicted. But like, yeah, he can, because it's not really about that. I do think there were some kind of interesting points about like how race impacted the conversation, but it was really supposed to be about these like pretty homogenous communities in the South, that part of the South, right? So it's not going to be like the most dynamic look at the opioid epidemic. It's not really going to talk too much about communities of color. It is really like specific events, I think. Like, it's trying to tell a generic story through specific events. Yeah, like I said, not 1 for stars, 3 stars. Okay, next up, let's talk about The Pretty One by Keah Brown. Keah has cerebral palsy, and she is a young Black woman. I believe she's a writer. Yeah, I know she's a writer. She's definitely a writer. But like, she does journalists, but I think she wants to get into like screenwriting. And she's become well known because she kind of started the hashtag disabled and cute, which had a viral moment. And I think this book is okay. I know that there's discussion in the book of how using the term cute in association with disabled people can be patronizing and like infantilizing to people with disability, and I respect that, but I have to say, like, her personality is very cute. Like, she reminds me of, like, she gives me total Lizzie McGuire energy. Like, she's definitely like an early aughts baby, you know what I mean? Like, the kind of girl who like had like pink and green notebooks and the pens with like the fluffy little ball, like, you know what I mean? Like, she just has that like really like nostalgic pop culture driven personality, and the kind of girl who, like I said, she talks about this like loving romantic comedies and being really into like these things. I don't know, it just, to me, she has that, and it's really nice. There's something very like refreshing and honest and like anti-cool girl, but in that way she's really like lovable and relatable, because she's not this like, I only watch underground literature and I only read poems by dead French communists. Like, she's not that at all, and it's really refreshing. And not that those people can't be refreshing too, but like, I'm here for Lizzie McGuire, man. Hilary Duff is awesome. And yeah, I just really loved her energy, and I loved the multitude of discussions she had. She talked about, you know, how we represent disability. She talked about disability, like within family dynamics, within friendships. And she clearly is someone who's so impacted by pop culture, and so it's a huge focus on this book. And I really do hope that she becomes a writer in one of these writer rooms, and she just like creates that disabled character who mirrors her life experience, so we can all fall in love with. And it's a more genuine and a genuine portrayal, authentic portrayal of disability in a way that doesn't, you know, focus, like, you know, it focuses on the holisticness of that experience. Yeah, I like can't wait for that. I also think this book, where Keah Brown was, I think, incredibly brave, is that she described when she was an asshole. And I think that that is the most magical, not magical, like that's like totally the wrong word, but like, I think she's very strong in that it's hard to reflect when you're the bad guy. Are we the baddies? And she's like, yeah, sometimes I'm the baddie. Sometimes I'm the baddie. And that was really powerful to read. I think it just reminds me of that really cheesy quote of like, hurt people hurt people. And she described that. She's like, look, I was rude to my sister. I had a bad relationship with her, and that was my fault, and I'm trying to fix that. And, you know, she talks about like friendships that she lost, and she says, that's my fault. I did that. And I don't know, I think if I was reading that as someone who had been in a similar situation to her, where like my, you know, fears around my own disability were causing me to treat the people that I love differently than I really wanted to because of those fears, I think this would be, you know, eye-opening in that way. And I don't know. I don't know if I could be that brave, I think. Like, I don't know if I could tell all the stories when I was the asshole. So I really am just like, wow, you're braver than me, dude. Like, I don't know if I could do that. And not even in a way that makes her look like a bad person, like in a way that just, you still really love her because she's so lovable, but you're like, not only are you lovable, but you're like open about when you're less lovable and how you've had to grow to be more lovable. But yeah, so I highly recommend that. And I believe she was also, she also had a story in Disability Visibility. I'll get that later. I'll get that later and see which story is particularly hers. That's like one of my favorite books. Everyone should read that book, Disability Visibility. Moving on, finally, all those books were audiobook. I really prefer to read nonfiction audiobook. I've mentioned that before, but now, guys, I've done it. I did it in December. I finished Tomb of Sand by Geetanjali Shree. Y'all, the pride I feel in myself is indescribable. I do love this book, but it's a little bit of a chonker. You know, what is it? an absolute unit. It's a unit. For me, it's a unit. For some of you, it's gonna be nothing. But this is a book which describes like a woman's rebirth into her own story. That's how I would say it. Her husband dies. She, in a way, becomes like a seed in the soil, germinating, and then she arises and she becomes this youthful, excited spirit. And you think, oh, she is like reversing backwards, she's becoming a child, but the truth is she is rediscovering something about her past. And the book ends, would have never seen it a million miles away. I think this is probably a story that is like deeply personal to like Indian and Pakistani like they will have a much deeper understanding of this book obviously than I will, but I still think that the way that Shree writes, it's so beautiful. It's so, just the way she describes everything is unbelievably lovely. Some of the chapters are so short, but yet, I don't know, like the way that things are personified, the way that, and like it's so sing-songy, and it's deep, it's biting, it's accurate. I love it. So I'm just gonna read a passage just to show how she writes and how much I love it. Some say this is a new age. Others say that when it comes to women, it's always a new age. New age, meaning things have changed for women. Things have always changed for women. Women are no longer in the roles they used to be in. They're always in new roles. They've started coming out. They've always done that. They go inside, always. It's just like she has these conversations back and forth. She talks about light. She talks about birds. Birds are like a character in this. This one crow, he's like out there doing it. And I don't know, it's really beautiful. There's a part in the book, I'm gonna say we're like around the 500s, where you're kind of gonna start going down. Like some stuff happens and then it kind of goes down. Stick with it, because the ending, it just shoots right back up. And I love this. I think it's like a big book, so it's so hard to recommend to people, I think, because of its heftiness. But I'm visiting my friend soon, and I know you're watching this, you're gonna read this book. This book is amazing. I love this book. This has been a good reading year, guys. I've had some real wins this year. Oh, that's actually it. That's all I've read. Okay, so there's one book that I literally finished New Year's Day, and I want to say that I finished it in December, but I also don't want to be a lying liar who lies, so that'll be my January reading wrap up. But I can talk about the book that I'm currently reading, Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Adichie. Okay, I read half-ish of Americana. Not a big fan. Didn't really love it. This is so good, and I think I'm gonna like try to finish Americana. Like, obviously I want to finish that eventually, but I think I'm gonna try and finish it this year. I'm trying to finish it this year with the knowledge of like how much I'm enjoying Purple Hibiscus. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time in one of those videos I mentioned earlier, either a 2020 reading wrap up or a part 2 of my bookshelf tour. Thank you.